Hi there, this is Elise Bennin, your marketing mentor. And this is the podcast for you if and only if you are ready to leave the feast or famine syndrome behind, and I mean for good. A couple of weeks ago, I did a free mentoring session with Stephanie Mickelson. She was a podcast listener who had heard me mention that I offer this free session, which is something I just recently added to my outro, actually, and she jumped on it. I could tell right off the bat that this woman is smart, she has the right mindset, and she just needed a little direction. So that's what I gave her. I also explained that my podcast guests are people who practice what I preach, which is what she's pretty much already doing without knowing it. And of course, it's working because marketing works when you do it. And then she confessed that she had no training in marketing, which she called a weakness. But her success is proof that training really isn't necessary if you have the right attitude, a willingness to take action, and a little chutzpah. I just loved so many of the things Stephanie said, and I wanted you, my dear listeners, to hear them too. So I invited her to be a guest. And here we are. So listen and learn. Hello, Stephanie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Elise. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And as always, I like to start with you introducing yourself. So give us just your elevator pitch and a brief background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Stephanie Mickelson. I'm a freelance content marketing writer. I focus primarily on home improvement, building materials, construction companies. I write a lot of blog posts. I write for a couple different publications, so Angie.com, Go Banking Rates. And I've also started offering case study services for building materials and construction companies.
And why is that your focus?
So the building materials I kind of fell into when I lived in Virginia now a number of years ago. I met a guy, he was a retired Navy SEAL, and we started talking about what he did, and he did kitchen remodeling. And I just kind of offhanded said, well, you should hire me for that. And he goes, for what? And I said, well, I mean, you could probably use an assistant, right? And he was like, do you have any experience? And I said, no, but I do have a drill and I'm a fast learner. He did not hire me that day. That was not a surprise, but he did. We became really, really good friends. We're still friends to this day. And he hired me to be his construction assistant. So I helped, we installed cabinets and flooring and built pergolas and framed in rooms and he taught me everything, did everything. So then, fast forward many years, I was a teacher for 8 years. I taught high school and middle school English. And then I decided to stay home with my children and still wanted to kind of bring in, some money and help out financially. So I started doing some freelance writing. And eventually I came across a job posting for, they wanted content for countertops. And everything just kind of like in that moment, because I was like, well, that sounds interesting. I'm like, well, why? What business do I have writing about countertops? And then everything kind of like clicked into place. And I went, oh my gosh, like I have experience in this industry. It's very interesting to me. And then that just kind of, just built on itself. And now here I am, 6 years later, kind of still writing in that same niche and same industry.
And I just want to point out that the attitude that allows you to say, you should hire me, even though you have no experience, but you do have a drill, is, I think, one of the reasons I asked you to join me on the podcast when we did the free mentoring session a couple of weeks ago. And I could just tell that you are someone who is practicing what I preach already. And a lot of it is in the mindset and in the attitude. So I just want to put a little spotlight on that from the beginning. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I actually have a funny story, and you don't know this, but when we were having that conversation, I can't remember what question you had asked me. You asked me a question. I was answering the question. And as I was answering the question, I don't know if I saw something on your face. I don't know, in my head, I just had the thought, she's going to ask me to be on her podcast. And as quickly as that thought flew through my head, another one chased it going, what? That's ridiculous. And as I'm answering the question, and I think your next sentence was, maybe I should have you on the podcast. And I think I just kind of sputtered because all of that had like happened so quickly in my head. And I went, yes, absolutely. I would love to be on your podcast.
Interesting.
Yes. And I know we kind of talked about in that session too, the fact that I'm very, very comfortable being uncomfortable. And that doesn't mean that it's always easy. But yeah, and I think that speaks to that idea of, just kind of seeing an opportunity and thinking like, well, yeah, I can do that. Like, you should hire me. I can, I should do this for you. And yeah, it leads to some really cool opportunities for sure.
Do you think of that as confidence?
Yes. I think that there's definitely an element of confidence. I think there's also maybe an element of like naivete in there too. Even as I'm saying it, sometimes in my head, I'm also like, I don't think you can do that thing. But I kind of like move myself past that and then get back to like, well, sure, I could probably try it.
And it sounds like you also trust yourself.
I do. And I think that's I've heard this quote a number of times and from a number of people, but it's that something to the effect of confidence is keeping promises to yourself and, taking the action that you say you're going to take. And I definitely think that, that's something that I've built on. And I'm very good at trusting my gut. And I mean, that's gone back as far as I can remember, back to even choosing a college. And I think that just being able to trust my gut and then take action and then seeing that typically that's like things work out really well that way. So it's almost like a muscle that I've built over the years of like, if I feel like this is the right thing to do or the right thing to say, it typically ends up being okay.
And you don't second guess yourself, it sounds like. You don't have time to second guess yourself.
Not very often. And I think, and there's a little bit of impulsivity in that too, where, you have the thought and then you do the thing, which can definitely have its downsides. But I think more often than not, it, like I said, leads to some really, really cool things.
Yeah. And what you said was it leads to some really interesting opportunities. And one of the things I find is that there are opportunities everywhere if we can open our eyes to them. And it seems to me what you're describing allows you to see the opportunities in front of you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's very true.
And one of the other elements that I am often talking about when it comes to this mindset and this attitude is courage and confidence. And sometimes when people say, I just don't have the confidence to do the thing I'm asking them or telling them they should do or could do or would be good to do, instead of you need the confidence first, I say, well, really, you just need courage first and the confidence will come later. So I'm curious how you think about courage.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly accurate. Because I mean, courage is kind of the ability to take the step, even if you're not confident, I think. And
or comfortable.
Yeah, or comfortable. And I think it's that courage is the stepping into the fact that, you might feel uncomfortable. And that's, me saying that I'm comfortable being uncomfortable doesn't mean that, I don't get nervous. I was nervous about this podcast earlier, but like when I feel those butterflies, and I don't know if this is natural or something I've kind of cultivated over the years, but like when I feel those butterflies, that's when I know I'm on the right track. So any hesitation I feel of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that thing, or, oh, maybe I'm not qualified to do this or say that. Usually like I can get myself over that hurdle of like, no, this is exciting. Like go do this thing,
So you reframe the nervousness and the butterflies as excitement for a new thing. Yeah.
And I used to tell students when I was teaching, I taught middle school and high school students, and there's all kinds of nerves and anxiety and all kinds of things happening in that age group. And I remember I kind of started to tell them like, because sometimes they would be nervous and they'd shut down. Yeah. And I'm like, being nervous or anxious, that doesn't always mean, danger and like that you need to back up. I said, sometimes, being nervous or anxious means that it's important. It means that it's something new, it's exciting, and being able to, like you said, reframe those nerves into something that's, less nervous, more exciting. I think
Yeah,
also just like opens you up to a lot of things.
totally. Awesome. All right. Well, and you may have already answered this somewhat, but tell me about the recent pivot that you made in your business.
Yes. I've been doing, blog posts and articles for over 6 years, and just the way that I've kind of seen the industry going. So back in December, when Google did the algorithm shift and like delisted all of the affiliate content, I didn't actually realize it when I saw all the news come out. I was like, oh, I feel really bad for all these people who are affected. And then I got like 3 emails from my clients that were like, hey, you know, we were affected. We're getting laid off, or we're not working with freelancers anymore. And I go, oh no, I'm the people that got affected. Um, and so yeah, over the last just like 6 months, and I was just thinking about this before we got on, I've been doing a lot of outreach kind of in the way that I had been doing it before, where I reach out to an editor and I say, hey, I'm Steph. I write about, XYZ. Here are some samples. And where that has worked in the past, it has not been working. And so I've been kind of like reframing what I want to do. I want to have a little bit more control. And I really want to start working with clients directly rather than publications, though I do still enjoy doing that. So now I'm working on getting clients in that building material and construction space. And I want to help them create case studies based on the projects that they're doing, the materials they're developing, the work they're doing. And I actually did a LinkedIn post about it today to really show like the proof of what you're doing.
Mhm.
And yeah, so that's where I'm headed now.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit more about how you're marketing your services and what is working. And maybe we'll link to that LinkedIn post in the companion blog post also so people can see what you're talking about. But what else
Oh,
are you
excellent.
doing? So you're
Yes.
doing outreach, which is one of the tools in the simplest marketing plan, and you're
Mm-hmm.
doing content marketing with your LinkedIn post. What else?
So a lot of it has been, I did kind of I'll call it a connection sprint. In April, I didn't have a lot of client work, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to double down on outreach. So I connected with, or I sent out connection requests rather to, I think, over 100 people over a couple weeks. Got a lot of connections in the industry. So that was kind of like step one, was when I post something on LinkedIn, I want the right people to see it, right? So if I'm not connected with people in the industry, they're not going to know that I'm out there.
Right. Mhm.
So that was kind of step one.
And wait, let me just
Oh,
stop you there before you go to
yeah.
step two. When you invite people to connect, do you add a personal note or not?
I actually experimented with that, and I do not take this as like the be all end all. It's a very small sample size. I saw a much greater response rate without a note.
Interesting. Hmm.
Yeah. And I think, because I've thought a lot about it, I think that's maybe because there's an element of curiosity.
Hmm.
If someone connects with you and you maybe don't know who they are, you'd be more likely to be like, oh, sure. Whereas and I think it's like less of a mental load. You click accept, you move on with your day. Whereas with the note, and my note also maybe wasn't the best either, but if I'm like, hey, I'm Stephanie Mickelson, I write in this space, I'd love to connect and talk about your needs. I think that right off the bat is more of a mental lift for them to be like, okay, wait, who is this person? Why is she connecting? I guess that's okay. Do I want to engage? Whereas just the other, like, I'd like to connect with you, and then they accept, and then I'll send a DM. So yeah, I
What does
tend
your
toward
DM say usually?
I've also experimented with that. Some of them have been, and we talked about this on the call too. At first, they were very much like, hey, I'm Steph. I'm a writer. Would you like me to write for you? Those do not get a lot of responses.
Mhm.
So I started adding some samples. I'm Steph. I'm a writer. These are the types of projects that I've worked on. I'd love to chat. I've gotten more responses for those types of DMs. And then now I haven't really leaned into this. And I know we talked about this too, but one way that I started kind of pinpointing potential clients was I found clients within my industry, or potential clients within my industry. And then if they already have testimonials, that kind of makes me think that they would be more willing to dive into a case study. So now as I move forward, my message is going to be geared more towards like, hey, I see that you have all of these great testimonials on your site. Would you like to talk about turning them into larger project spotlights or case studies to really like dig deeper into the project and, the outcomes for the client? So that's where I'm headed next.
Yeah, I love that. And I thought that was a really ingenious idea that I wish I had thought of, because what you're doing, basically, not only doing your homework, which is one of the ways outreach works, but you're also saying you already have the kernel of the type of project I could help you, and this would really help you. So let's talk about that, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think that is going to end up being a good jumping off point because, like I said, just saying, "Hey, I'm Steph. Do you want me to write for you?"
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that's a mental load.
Yeah, exactly. The answer is like, "Wait, who? I'm sorry, who are you?" It's kind of like when my friend said about kitchen remodeling, and I'm like, "I have a drill. Let me work for you," and he's like, "No." So I think that kind of getting more into the mindset of the client, because like I'm in my head, I know who I am, I know what I'm capable of. The people I'm reaching out to have no idea. Keeping that in mind and like kind of you hear about it all the time. You build those relationships, and it's when you're going out into the the wide world of the internet and going, okay, I have to build relationships. That's overwhelming. So for me, when I kind of had that realization, I'm like, oh, this is a really great way to like you said, there's that kernel already there. Like, let's get in and see if we can expand on that rather than starting from scratch.
Right. I love that. All right. So you gave us step one. What's step two?
Step two. So that was step one, was getting into
expanding your network, it seems to me, right?
Yes. Thank you. Expanding my network was number one. Number two is now I'm starting to post on LinkedIn a little bit more, not as regularly as I would like by any means. But
wait, be more specific about that. How often would you like, and how often are you?
I would like to post 3 times a week. I'm currently posting sporadically when an idea comes to me and I happen to be at my computer.
Okay.
So, not strategically. That now I'm trying to gear, and I also have other kind of side projects. So I'm balancing client posts with posts promoting my newsletter and then posts promoting the platform that I'm building. So my client posts are geared towards how to use content, how to create case studies, why to create case studies, basically, marketing myself as a partner who would be able to help them.
And what's the newsletter you referred to?
So I have a newsletter for freelancers called The Simple Freelancer. It's over on Substack. And I try and keep as much of my life as simple as possible. And that goes into my business as well. In The Simple Freelancer, I just kind of talk about, tips for freelancing, how to handle finances, how to get clients, how to approach LinkedIn and things like that. So that's been really fun.
Awesome. Do you have a newsletter for your business?
No, I don't. So that's definitely something down the road I've considered, because I know Leslie Blaze was on your podcast, and she has a really cool one. So I think that's a really good strategy too.
Good. All right. Anything else in your marketing toolbox, as it were?
So one thing that I've also been doing, and it actually paid off today, oddly enough.
Ooh, tell me.
Yes. So I think being in the right places is really, really valuable. And so for me, the clients that I'm gearing my LinkedIn strategy towards, they're not necessarily posting on LinkedIn, but I've found that they're there. And a lot of times I'll see them, the content directors, marketing managers, they will comment on company pages. So I'm not necessarily engaging with like their posts on their LinkedIn, but if I go to pages of companies within the industry, a lot of times they'll show up there. So I can comment on their comment, I can like their comment. So that's one place I found them. And then the one that paid off today is I found some webinars in the roofing industry. And so I've been going to webinars, and then in the chat, I'll just put, they'll say like, oh, introduce yourself and what you do. So today, actually, I typed in, and as I was typing it, I second guessed myself, and I'm like, should I really put my name in here? Like, that's kind of weird. I'm not a roofer. But I just typed in, I'm Stephanie. I'm a content marketing writer in the building materials industry. And an hour later, I had a guy that had been in the webinar reach out to me, and we got on. I was like, literally, I'm available from now until 2:00. And he goes, how about 11:30? And we literally got on a call within 5 minutes. And I now have, we're planning on potentially doing some case studies together and a couple other avenues to work together.
Awesome.
So yeah, just kind of like being in those spaces where your
At
clients
the right
are.
time.
Yeah,
Also.
and at the right time. Absolutely.
That's beautiful. I love that. And just building on the wins, I do remember that the day we did our free mentoring session, you had just gotten 2 new clients, and I'd love to know how. I don't think I asked you that.
No, yeah. So, like I said at the beginning of this recording, I've been doing outreach for about the last 6 months. And one other thing I think that is really important when you're in freelancing or any kind of job where you're trying to get clients is tenacity, and just kind of that, like, I'm just going to keep going. It's not working out. I'm just going to keep going and pivot where you need to. But like sometimes you just have to put your head down and just keep on moving.
Keep going.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've been doing like a variety of outreach for the last couple months. And then within the last 2 weeks, I'm now working with, 3 potential new clients. So one of the new clients was a referral from an online friend. We do this like co-working app together. And they're in the same marketing group. So she referred me to her. That one, I've got my first assignment. I'm going to start working on that this weekend. And then the other one was on LinkedIn. I saw a post, and I mean, freelancing right now it's been pretty crazy because there's like, you see a post on LinkedIn that's like, oh, I need writers. And all of a sudden there's 50 some comments, and that person is just getting flooded with DMs and emails. But I happened to wake up one morning, I saw a post that someone needed a freelance writer with woodworking experience, and my construction experience and like home DIY experience. I feel like I have enough. So I reached out to her. She said she got something like 300 emails.
Wow.
Mine happened because I have the adjacent experience happened to work out and stand out to her. But yeah, that was just a response to a LinkedIn post, which, and I think what I think is interesting is, with the exception of the one today where I was in the webinar, I introduced myself and it went from there. The other 2 don't really have anything to do with the outreach that I've done specifically. It wasn't somebody that I reached out to, right? It was other avenues. But I think the fact that I think when you put things out there, it generates something. I think it just like generates momentum, and whether the opportunities come from that directly or from other avenues, I think it's like you still have to do something in order to get that to come back to you, if that makes sense.
I could not have said it any better, Stephanie. Truthfully, I say a version of that a lot, and it's true.
Yeah.
It sounds woo-woo sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm putting something out there. What I'm getting back is not exactly what I put out there, but hey,
Yeah.
who cares?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's funny. I mean, the other thing I'm thinking as you're talking about this is what I hear from a lot of people who struggle with their marketing, which is that they don't want to put themselves out there for all different reasons, but you seem to have no qualms about it.
Well, I have qualms. I have lots of qualms. Yeah. Like I said earlier, I think it's just a matter of like, I don't know, pushing yourself through it. Sometimes I almost bully myself into doing it because I'll be, as I'm writing, and I'm like, nope, this sounds stupid. You don't want to put this out there. And then like the other part of me is like, just do it. Don't be a wuss.
Shut up.
Just do it. Yeah. And so I encourage myself, but sometimes I'm not always very kind. And I'm like, just get over it. So yeah, but no, I definitely, I mean, before I hit publish, I have a list of LinkedIn posts that are just waiting for me to be like, yep, this is good enough. Get it out there. So yeah, I mean, it's a constant, like it's a constant kind of spiral of self-talk of like shutting down those thoughts because they're so natural.
Right.
Like we have such a natural tendency to tell ourselves like, no, don't do that, or oh, wait a little bit, or it's not good enough. And I think that it's just the ability to kind of like shout over top of that. Say, nope, just do it.
Agreed. I want to get to AI actually,
Okay.
because I'm curious how you're thinking about AI, how you're using AI. What, where are you with AI?
I feel like I go in spurts. I actually just realized I'm like, oh, I haven't been on Chat GPT in like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I was using it a lot. I was using Chat GPT to try and build a website, which turns out I do not have the web development experience required. None, in fact, is how much I have. So that didn't work out. But I think there's definitely the element of fear that comes with AI. And I know there was actually somebody else on your podcast who had talked about it. And I was like, I think I even included a quote from her in my newsletter because AI, and I think there was like the initial, I'm trying to like gather my thoughts because there's so
Mm-hmm.
many.
Mm-hmm.
There was the initial wave of anything new, people just kind of like jump into it. And it's like, oh, look at this cool feature and this cool feature. And I had heard somewhere that the thing that like we might get into trouble because AI to create content is drawing on content that's already out there.
Mm-hmm.
So the more AI generated content that's out there, the more AI is going to pull from its own content. And things are going to get muddy really, really fast. But I think for me, that's where going into like the case study kind of niche is really appealing because that's actually, I think if you to focus more on the human aspect of things
Mm.
in this world where like I literally have a robot mop that mops my floors for me and it's incredible. But it also doesn't do as good of a job as I do.
Mm-hmm.
So like there has to be that balance between what can AI do versus what can humans do. And that's where, finding those areas where it can't do it yet, or maybe it never will. So, like
Mm-hmm.
a case study where you're taking a project, you're interviewing, the client, you're interviewing the client's client to kind of pull all these things together is not necessarily something that AI is going to be able to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think finding, as far as like work goes, I think finding those areas where it hasn't gotten that far and to kind of zero in on those things and double down on that, at least for the time being, because we don't know where it's going to go from here.
Right. And the other common denominator in what you're saying is a level of complexity that AI
Mm-hmm.
is not capable of doing well enough yet.
Yeah. And I also think there's, it's just another innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been innovations throughout time. Like there's always, I don't know, I've heard the story of like, the buggy whip factories where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, now we have a car, we don't need your product, or candle makers when it's like, well, wait, there's this thing called the light bulb. This is terrible, and everybody else is like, light bulbs are great. So
Right.
it's, and they either have to adapt or pivot or, like maybe the business fails because you need to be doing something else or you need to, I don't know. So yeah, I think it's just another innovation in a long, 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 long line of
Mm-hmm.
innovations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Before I ask you for a baby step that people might take to, I don't know, move in the direction that you're moving in, let's just say
Mhm.
it could be anything. I do want to bring back one of the quotes that you shared, something you said that I wrote down, which
Oh.
I loved when we talked, and just elaborate a little bit on it. You said, "My business is a barge. I'm hanging on to the back, trying to keep up. I'm doing well. I'm making a full-time income, but I feel like I'm chasing things. I know where I want to go, and it's time to climb onto the barge."
Yes. So that actually, I've thought about that because I started my writing business when my older two children were 1 and 3. We added another baby into the mix. So I had, newborn 2 and 4. Now they're 5, 7, and 9. And so for the entirety of my career, my freelance writing career, up until this past school year when they all headed to school, I've been, making it work before they wake up, during nap time, after they go to bed. I'll put on a movie and I'll work while they're watching a movie, or I'll have, my husband take them for a while if he's home. And so throughout all of those years, it really has felt like this barge, like it's moving,
Mm,
it's slow, it's cumbersome, but it's moving forward. And I've just been kind of hanging on to the back and like kicking my little feet. Like, I got this, I can keep up. And just kind of like going wherever it took me. And now with them, now they're home for summer break. So the hours are a little different again. But yeah, I'm getting to a point where I really want to be able to climb onto the barge, get closer to the steering wheel, and kind of take it in a direction of, more like, it's been great. It's worked out really well. I'm making a full-time income. It's very flexible. So I'm just incredibly thankful for what I've been able to do. And yeah, so now I'm getting myself more though into the mindset of like, okay, I have to have a plan to get to a direction, or at least start towards it, because the path might change depending. But yeah, I get to take a little bit more control now, and that's very exciting.
That is. Well, I have full faith and confidence in your ability to do that. And we'll obviously have to do a sequel to this podcast, maybe in a year or so, whenever you're ready to update the people on how far you've come and how you've gotten there. But I just want to thank you so much for sharing, again, your energy and your strategy and what you're learning. It's just so valuable. And before I ask you to tell people where they can find you, I do always ask, like, what is a baby step you think people could take to move in your direction?
One of the things I say a lot is start where you are with what you have. I started my writing business, on the couch before the kids woke up I had a school issued laptop from the school that I was working at. When I quit, I had to buy my own laptop, but just take whatever idea you have, whatever little kernel or nugget you have, and just start where you are with what you have. If you have a LinkedIn profile and you want to start posting there, that's awesome. If you have, some people in the community that you can reach out to and say, hey, I can offer this service to you, for free or for a little bit, or charge, what you want to charge. I think it's just like I said, I think the universe favors action, and however you can get the ball rolling, I think is the most beneficial thing that you can do.
I totally agree. Again, I thank you for sharing. Tell the people where they can find you.
I am most active on LinkedIn. You can search Stephanie Mickelson, Mickelson. I do not know how many of us that there are, but I'm a content marketer and strategist is I think what my title is right now. But yeah, so LinkedIn would be the best place.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me repeat Stephanie's baby step, with which I totally agree. She said, start where you are with what you have. It really is that simple. So try it. And if you want my help figuring all of this out, take advantage of my free mentoring session. That's what Stephanie did, and look what it got her. You can find that and lots more resources, including my simplest marketing plan at marketing-mentor.com. So enjoy, and I'll see you next time.